When working on your About Me HTML and CSS review, one of the things that most students find challenging is creating the 2-column and 3-column layouts, as well as getting everything to look nicely spaced out. We didn't even get into making the About Me project mobile responsive, but you could imagine it would take us a while. As you have already found out, coding everything from scratch can be very time consuming. Now, imagine you had a full library of CSS ready and responsive classes that you could use to easily build websites. Everything from layouts, buttons, navigation bars, forms, and even JavaScript ready components. This can all be found in the Bootstrap CSS framework. It is extremely popular throughout the internet and one of my favorite ones to work with. Most importantly, it's free and it's open source. So let's dig in and take a look at some of the major Bootstrap features. And we're going to start off by going to the Bootstrap website. So their website is going to be getbootstrap.com. All right. And once you're there, make sure you're at the purple website. There's quite a few different versions. We're going to be working with version 4.4. If you Google just Bootstrap CSS, it should be the first one that comes up, but again, there's other versions. So just make sure you're at the purple one, or on see, like this one's another one, and it's version 3.41. And up here, luckily, they have this, looking for Bootstrap 4. Click that and it'll redirect you to that main page. Now, Bootstrap has a ton of features, and we definitely don't have time to cover all of them, but once you get the hang of it, you will be building websites really fast that look really professional. Now, let's go over some of its features really quick. Again, guys, make sure to make note of this website. I will be referencing it a lot, and I will be asking you guys to reference it, as it's going to provide all the source code and everything we need when we are building the websites. So we're going to go ahead and hit over to documentation. Now, here are some of the things that we can easily do. Right, so we'll be going over the quick start in another video, but if we go over to components, we'll kind of get an idea of everything that's already pre-built for us, right? So when we were working on the About Me project, we wanted to insert a button, and we had to go in, create our own CSS. If we go over here to buttons, it already has all these pre-made buttons for us, right? And simply by adding classes. So for example, it has all these buttons right here. Let's say we wanted the blue button. We would just add the class button, and then we would add the class button primary, and it would give us this button, right? And again, there's a lot of other options in there. The same thing with maybe if we just wanted the outline buttons, we would just give it the class button and button outline primary, and it would give us the blue button. If we wanted a small button or a large button, again, we would just give it a class, and it would automatically size that button for us. So in this case, and what's great about the website, guys, is it gives you the example of how it would look and the code right below it with the classes. Right, little by little you start kind of memorizing them, but for now we'll be referencing this page a lot. So button primary and then button large makes a large button large. If we wanted a small button, we would just give it the button small class. Right, if we wanted to stretch the full way, we just button block. Right, and it keeps going with many options: disabled state, active state. Right. Aside from buttons, we have all these other components, like forms, drop downs, navigation bars, popovers, spinners, tooltips, and we'll kind of be going over all of them. But one of the biggest things that we really use in Bootstrap is, if we go over here to layout, is to create the layouts, right? The grid system. So Bootstrap has this grid system, and it's going to be a 12-column grid, right? So this is what helps us create the layouts. But just remember, it's always going to be a 12-column grid. So for example, if you wanted to create a 2-column layout, you're going to think of like, well, what's half of 12? So 12 in this case is your 100%, right? So everything has to add up to 12. So if you do a 2-column grid, you would do, 6 columns and then another 6 columns. If we want to do a 3-column grid, you would go 12 divided by 3, and then that would give you 4, 4, and 4, giving you your 3-column layout, and so on. Right, so it would look kind of like this. Here you could see you have your 12 columns. If you want to do a 3-column layout, 4, 4, 4. Maybe you want to do 1/4, 1/3, and 2/3. You would do 4 and 8. You're going to do half, 6, and 6. Right, and you could offset them, giving you great flexibility when creating layouts. Now, every row or every one of these rows needs to be inside a container. So we have 2 types of containers, so typically you just have container and container fluid. So once we start coding, we're going to go over some examples, guys. We're just going to do a quick overview here, right? And if we look at the grid, so if you go layout grid, I really recommend that you guys go over this page and just kind of get a better idea of how the grid system works. All right, so 1 of 3 columns, 1 of 3 columns, 1 of 3 columns, right? So everything's going to have a container, and then inside the container we're going to do our row, and each column inside that row is going to have a column class. All right, and then we're also going to get into the responsiveness of each breakpoint, either the extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. Now, the great thing about Bootstrap is the auto layout columns, right? So most of the time, for example, for our project, our About Me project, we just wanted a 3-column layout, nothing crazy. So we don't even have to define anything, and Bootstrap will automatically determine if it's 2 columns or 3 columns, and it'll divide the space evenly according to how many columns are inside of your row. So on this scenario here, we have our container, and then inside this row we have 1 column with just the class column and another column with just the class of column, right? COL. So it's automatically going to know, hey, there's only 2 columns in a row, nothing was defined, so it's going to be 50% and 50%, so 6 and 6. The same thing with 3 columns. So if we do 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, it's going to be like, oh, it's 12 divided by 3, and it's going to break it up into 3 parts. Perfect. So again, we're going to go over this. We're going to go ahead and go do some examples. And now, one of the things you guys are going to see me do a lot is that there's a lot of items in this documentation, so I just use the search. So if I need to look for anything, for example, let's say I need to kind of see what the code for the spacing is, I just type in spacing, and it takes me to the page for spacing, and here I can like, oh, okay, we're using M for margin, P for padding, and T for top, B for bottom, and then I get 0 to 5, right? I get the examples there. For example, again, we already touched buttons, but I wanted to go back to the buttons. I just type buttons and button tags, button outlines, so if I wanted the outline buttons, it takes me right to the outline buttons. So make sure to use the search a lot. It comes in very, very handy. And that's about it. Well, let's go ahead and start coding.